kong, ua, ua, uga, konga, 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 konga. Welcome. I am the Moonchin King, and welcome to our first ever episode of Monkey Tuesday, delivering your monkey business on a Tuesday. Today I am reviewing Kong Skull Island, which was directed by everyone's favorite and most beloved Jordan Vogt, and written by these guys. In the story by this guy. Released in March 2017, people flocked to the nearest theater in droves to see a giant ape on the supposedly spooky but definitely deserted island. Again. Because clearly there aren't enough apes in their own lives to look forward to. You may be wondering why I'm only now reviewing this movie 4 months after its release. And the banana side of me wants to say that it's because this movie put me into a deep sleep from which I only recently recovered. Alternatively, that I simply forgot this even existed. However, the orange or pineapple side of me wants to say that I simply haven't gotten around to it till now. Which is truth and which is fiction? You decide. Now, I actually saw this in theaters, among those eagerly anticipating the sight of Kong's hairy chest. It didn't meet expectations. The premise of this story is that John Goodman's character is trying to convince some stubborn, but actually very sensible old man to allow him to go wandering into some unknown territory to find this mysterious island, before others get to it first, due to improved satellite mapping, namely the Russians. You don't actually play any part in the plot. Might have been cool though. It is set after the end of the Vietnam War, and for those of you who are too young to remember and haven't seen Rambo, go and see Rambo. This is of course background for Samuel L. Jackson's character, who is some grouchy colonel, upset that he can no longer have fresh blood on his hands on the daily. I think, well, he comes along to this exhibition because he hasn't had enough of jungle terrain, I guess, and hasn't got some nice family members he could be spending quality time with, I guess, and hasn't got any nasty American cheeseburgers to be attending to either, I guess. They also drag along Tom Hiddleston because they are under the impression he would be useful in all of this. Apparently, he is supposed to be a reputable and formidable tracker, which he had better be considering his very large payment. But actually, he does very little of anything in this, never mind being a god. And of course, there are loads of disposable characters who turn up and who don't get disposed and are just there. I'm assuming these are scientists of some sort, but they were pointless. There was also this female photographer who tagged along, and I'm not sure what her purpose was either. She touched Kong's face for some reason toward the end, and she fell into some water later on and had to be saved by Kong, in a way that I would actually have expected to have crushed her to death. He was literally holding her in his fist while filing a thing, and I'm sure at one point he put his hand down this creature's throat and ripped out its tongue, all while somehow still holding on to the woman. There was, however, a cool fight scene nonetheless. I don't really remember that much of it, but I know I enjoyed it enough while I was watching it. Now that is true for a lot of what actually was enjoyable in this movie. Entertaining enough to watch at the time, but not a lot of it was very memorable. There was a great scene near the beginning when Kong was first introduced to the audience. A Vietnamese pilot and an American pilot crash-landed and were dueling it out, and Kong is revealed and wipes them out. That was honestly quite a tense, chilling moment, and a good introduction to this giant banana. But I think from there on, it didn't reach that peak a whole lot. But for a few interesting moments and a couple of fetching action sequences, there wasn't really any upkeep of that intensity, one of the exceptions being also near the beginning when they find the island. There's this devastating sequence when the helicopters get torn from the sky when they first encounter Kong, which was surprisingly very early on. They just came buzzing in, dropping their bombs, and I had to smile at the guy with mirrored aviator glasses who was just grinning ear to ear as he was causing all this havoc. I heard someone in the row beside me say quite audibly, "That's Americans for you." And I don't deny that. I deny that. I do think they did give away Kong too soon on the island. And after that sequence, which just cuts away abruptly, making you wonder what exactly happened right after that point, we see Kong just casually strolling around like some sleepwalking toddler. And all that anticipation, all that atmosphere in the intro is sucked right out of the movie. There were in fact many choppy scene transitions in this movie. Scenes which just end abruptly, where you want to find out what happens right after, and you never get shown, and you never get told. Or you're just scratching your head wondering what the point even was about all of this. But it was also a tense, very striking introduction, and there are a couple of others involving Kong. Mentally though, there's not much here. Character-wise, there's not much here. It was all thematically pretty flat also, and visually, for the most part, not that interesting either in my opinion. Compared with Tarzan, which I had seen a few months prior, which had beautiful cinematography and landscapes, this wasn't very strong. The imagery in Tarzan I had thought was amazing from the get-go. There's an orangey haze in Kong as can be seen in the trailers and other muted colors. They didn't seem to want to embrace fully any imaginative thoughts regarding the creative aspects or designs. The main enemy creatures were generic monsters, and honestly the same old dinosaurs would have been more interesting. There was a scene where the giant spider creatures were up in the trees, which was of course spine-tingling. Whenever you have giant insects or bugs or spider-like creatures, but they were hidden by the surroundings for the most part, and it was all over very quickly. It felt like they were too hesitant to go all out, which was disappointing. They mentioned giant ants right afterward, which would have been obviously a nice setup for later, but they never even showed up at all. Clearly, these writers have never heard of Chekhov's gun, and they're in need of a lesson. Chekhov's gun is a concept that describes how every element of a story should contribute to the whole. It comes from Anton Chekhov's famous book writing advice. If in the first act you have hung a pistol on the wall, then in the following one it should be fired. Otherwise, don't put it there. Someone's wedding ring does not automatically shout dramatic significance, but if a point is made to mention or describe it in any detail, this signals to the reader that something related to the ring or marriage is bound to happen. So, in other words, if you promise us giant killer ants, then you better deliver giant killer ants. Or don't even bother mentioning them. What a disappointment. Did they think we would react positively to being teased that there are some interesting, potentially terrifying creatures about, and them deciding to then not bother to show them? There was a cute giant buffalo creature. Yeah, just saying. There was also this very interesting looking wooden log monster called the Spore Mantis, apparently. When I saw that, that was one of the very few moments when I thought finally some imagination. I'm not saying it matched the tone or anything else in the movie, because it didn't. Looked like something out of a fantasy game, but I wanted more of that type of visual. There was this squid creature that Kong has a fling with that I liked. I don't believe I've seen Kong fight anything with tentacles before, but that was visually interesting, I found. People have defended the lack of characterization by arguing that this was a monster movie, and therefore the focus should be on the monsters and the human characters would just be there for the meat. But to me, that isn't even how this came across. A lot of the time you just see Kong dragging his feet around, sitting around, eating a supper, hula hooping, doing a samba, and not actually doing a whole lot of monstering. After the initial helicopter sequence, I don't believe he actually got many human kills in actually. They should have made it more frightening, more engrossing, more destructive, just more gruesome. Anything. But if this was intended to be a pure monster movie, well, have more monsters. Or at least show us the monsters for more than a few glimpses at a time. For example, the spider-like creatures really were hidden from view, as if they were hiding behind some bush at the back of the painting. The only visually interesting human death I can remember was when this guy gets picked off this boat by these flying creatures, which then rip him apart in mid-flight. Yes, have more of that stuff. Although I don't actually know who that guy was, but I'd rather have a load of random, unknown guys being taken down in imaginative, gruesome ways than a load of random, unknown guys just there for some reason, and then they all go home, I'm assuming. That ending was very odd, though. You see reinforcements arriving as this group of survivors are paddling off, and then you see Hairy Face turn around and give his big old roar, and then end. So, what happened? Did they battle it out again? Did Kong just skip off down the yellow brick road? Just why? I mean, even that ending was a choppy, abrupt head-scratcher. It was set up and came across as a wartime movie, with loud thumping music popping up every now and again. At least that was something keeping you awake, even if they did seem a bit out of place at times. For example, when John C. Reilly is saying goodbye to the natives, who were also very bland and uninteresting, and didn't do anything, and didn't even speak in this. But anyway, I thought that was a genuinely emotional moment. Then it cuts to another scene, and there's immediately the thumping music again. It was a little bit jarring, and cuts short that very scarce moment of feeling in this movie, of true emotion. Oh, by the way, John C. Reilly was stuck on this island for years, and he just sort of popped up halfway through. And from the trailers, I thought it was a bad idea, and no one would take him seriously. And I don't think anybody did, but even though he was exactly how he came across, he at least brought something interesting to watch in this. And I remember him. There was one scene where a joke came across fine the first time, but then it just went on, and by prolonging the joke, they just blew it, and it was awkward to watch. But other than that, he came across very positively. The only other memorable faces were Tom Hiddleston because he's Tom Hiddleston, the woman because she's a woman, Fred Flintstone because he's Fred Flintstone, and he will always be Fred Flintstone. Which actually makes it quite fitting he's in this movie considering his prehistoric past. Actually, you know what? Thinking on it, I don't remember the woman's face. I'm serious. I don't remember what she looked like, other than that she was a woman. However, I remember this guy's face because I recognized him from this movie, and I'm sure there was a generic black guy in there somewhere. But I can't visualize him either. And no, I'm not talking about Mr. J. Am I just imagining him rather badly? Because I'm not sure at this point. Now, Samuel L. Jackson. Yes, I inevitably would remember him because he's Samuel L. Jackson, but actually he probably had the standout performance of the movie. You could see he wasn't just phoning this in, and although his character arc was baffling toward the end, and you get frustrated by his recklessness, performance-wise you could see there was a passion there, which is more than I can say for most of the cast. Therefore, Mr. Jackson is awarded the Golden Moonchin. This would certainly have been a whole lot better without him. I particularly enjoy the scenes where he's just staring calm down, usually surrounded by flames. Some people may not be a fan of these due to the slow-mo effect, but for me, I enjoy this intensity over a lot of blandness in other places, and it added a nice bit of flair. As I stated earlier, I wasn't looking forward to John C. Reilly, but he came across as interesting, at least, and in among a load of forgettable and underused characters, this was certainly an advantage for him. He was memorable and perhaps the only character who actually had a completed arc. So surprisingly, I've got to give him the Silver Moonchin. Now, the Bronze Moonchin is difficult because it's got to go to either Tom Hiddleston or John Goodman, as they were the only other two faces I remember from this. Except this guy, but his role in this was so minimal and so amounted to really nothing, and could have been removed from this. So, to the extent where people were calling out his name, Jack, I believe, and I had no idea who they were talking about, who they were looking for all this time, and I only eventually realized when somebody found his note talking about his child, then I remembered. Oh yeah, that guy. Seriously, I remember being baffled during that run of the movie. Now, you could also say similar things about Hiddleston's character. Ultimately uninteresting, unimpressive. Not a bad actor, but just nothing to show off here. John Goodman did a good job with what he was given, and I was happy to see him on screen again, and I think this character suited him very well, actually. Good job, Goodman. However, again, the problem was he wasn't given a whole lot to do, and he never had the chance to complete his arc. He was really the propeller that set the plot in motion. This was his adventure, his treasure hunt, and there was no real closure to that. He died very abruptly, and again I was baffled why the central character had been executed so blandly. They should have dressed him up in a loincloth, gave him a great big club or mammoth leg, have him jump up and yell yabba dabba doo, but they didn't. And they've got to lose points for that. There was some background information about him revealed where you can get a slight sense of his motives in all of this, but what was the point? His character goes nowhere. He doesn't have his own confrontation with Kong like Jackson does, even though he's the one who was supposed to have a greater connection to him. He could have died the minute he set foot on the island, crashed in a helicopter even, and the story would not have changed. He's been searching 90 years for this island so he can prove that these monsters exist, but he never goes back to civilization. We don't see how these events are responded to by the wider world. We don't see any credit given to him by anybody. All he gets is an abrupt death. So between Goodwin and Hiddleston, it is difficult to say which of their characters are more worthy of my Moonchin. But I've decided to give the Bronze Moonchin to Goodman, because I found him to be more engaging, more fitting, more important, and I thought it was a shame when he left the stage so soon. I would have rather Hiddleston had taken his place actually. I would have liked to have seen Goodman's arc properly completed and not just set aside. But the actors didn't write the script, that was these guys. And I think it is unfortunate that it didn't play out stronger or more provoking even in some way. One other thing that I think is very telling about this movie is that I do not remember the names of anyone in this when I came out. The only person I could remember, like I've said, was Jack, but I could not remember it at first. The only reason I remembered the name Jack was because everyone was shouting it out, looking for him. But I didn't know who they were referring to until much later. Now, everyone else in this movie, I do not know what their characters' names actually were. I am serious. I cannot remember one name. I know Samuel L. Jackson's character was a Colonel something, but that is it. And I thought this was worth pointing out because, honestly, if you can't remember one character's name, and I don't have that bad a memory, I don't think, does not paint a great picture of it, you know? So, to conclude, it actually wasn't that far off my expectations. I honestly wasn't too excited for this movie, the closer and closer it came. The first teaser trailer, of course, caught my interest, but the more and more that was released and the more I saw, it honestly didn't look all that exciting to me. Kong was intriguing enough, but somehow it mostly appeared bland and not offering a whole lot that looked refreshing or new. And that's pretty much how it turned out. Entertaining enough in places, but ultimately mostly forgettable. Kong himself, I liked the design for the most part. I liked his size and how he stood on 2 feet, gave a nice contrast to the previous version and homage to the original. I actually liked the brown shade he had on his fur also. Now I know it will probably seem like I've been bashing this movie throughout this review, but honestly, I think online critics have been overtly harsh on it. Yes, it was a bit bland. Yes, it lacked some imagination. Yes, it lacked heart, and spirit, and feeling. But I don't think there's anything horrific to be outraged by in this. Nothing to be overly dismayed by. It may be disappointing. But unless there's some real Kong fanboys out there who have been waiting for this movie for years, nothing to be losing your precious sleep over. Do I recommend it? It's not getting a whole lot of Moonchins from me, unfortunately. It will definitely interest some of you for a couple of hours. I think it's worth a viewing if you think you'll be interested in a giant hairy chest and haven't seen it yet. Then why not? And if you have already seen Kong Skull Island, share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I am the Moonchin King. Oh, by the way, there's also an after credits trailer, which again is pretty bland and uninteresting, unless you're a big fanboy of this mythos. And you're very familiar with this probably won't be very interesting to a lot of viewers. But some of you may find it exciting if you're familiar with all of this. Check it out if you think you know. If you would like to see more of me on your YouTube screens, like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and let me know. Farewell, my Moonchins. Take care, my Moonchins. Kong, ua, ua, uga. Konga, 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 konga. Konga, konga, konga. Oh.
Thank you.